Okay, I think we're 3, 6, 7. Okay, we have them all. Okay, first I'm going to give some time. If there is a question specific to any of the presenters, and if you have anything specific to Andrew, it would be a good time to do so.
Yes, it's regarding your presentation. I noticed that one of your slides, you indicated that there was a driving Y gene in Aedes, in Aedes. So I wanted to ask you if there are studies on that, and if they have used the methodology to control Aedes, because this is one of the T-Rex vectors, because it transmits at least 5 viral infections, including dengue and Zika and Mayaro and yellow fever and so forth.
Yeah, I more or less put that up there hoping someone would ask me a question. So the short answer is there are a lot of different programs for controlling Aedes aegypti and using different sort of genetic biocontrol methods. So Wolbachia is one. There's a more traditional genetic engineering that looks like sterile insect technique. But people are also looking at using those driving Y chromosomes to see if that can be an effective method of more or less of population suppression to reduce disease transmission. And they're just in different states of research. And you know, it's been interesting to me because we had a short session on Aedes that we conducted at the end of the workshop in Reston to see if the things we were talking about would apply to Aedes aegypti or not, because it was right at the time when people were becoming really interested in Zika. And the moral of the story is a lot of the same issues are relevant for Aedes, and you can use the same molecular tools. There are some differences. One of the key differences is that Aedes is invasive all over the world, and a lot of those populations are invasive, problematic populations, whereas Anopheles, generally you're trying to control them in their point of origin in sub-Saharan Africa. But there are efforts. I can't really talk intelligently in detail about how people are trying to use the driving Y, but the model is the same as other sex ratio population suppression methods.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up, you mentioned the impact of removing all mosquitoes. What would that be? What is the role of mosquitoes in the ecosystem? Yeah,
that's a great question. We spent a lot of time on it. So, you know, there's a couple of things that you should know. One is, you know, Anopheles gambii is one of something like 400 species of Anopheles mosquito in Africa. So, you know, when you talk about eliminating the malaria vectors, you're talking about just a fraction of the mosquito populations. And, you know, there's differences in how these populations fit into the ecology, but not huge differences between Anopheles species. They have similar life cycles, they have similar interactions with things that eat them, and they bite similar things. So, you know, what happens when you get rid of them? Experience suggests not much in the ecology. And people have been researching actually for a while why that is. And it's a combination of a few things. One, there's very few specialist predators for mosquitoes. Two, mosquitoes turn out not to be all that nutritious. Turns out you have to eat a lot of them in order to get much out of it. Their behavior, the way they sort of move around and swarm and then disappear, means they're just not that appealing as a specialist food. There are some studies recently that identified two species of jumping spiders around Lake Victoria that feed primarily on Anopheles mosquitoes. But again, it's not certain that removing a single species from the many Anopheles species that inhabit that region is going to have much impact on them ecologically. So it comes up a lot. Lots of things do eat mosquitoes, but very few things rely on mosquitoes as a significant part of their diet. So there are many examples of islands, for example, and particular regions where they've been very effective at eliminating Anopheles gambii or other problematic mosquito species. And there's, as of yet, no observations of ecological harm as a result. Aedes is, again, the big issue with Aedes that's different is in most places where Aedes is a problem, it's an invasive species. So even though it occupies a similar environmental niche, people don't value it as part of the ecology. So if you get rid of it, you're going back to the situation before you introduced it. And even though, the bats and the birds that are eating it don't notice that it's an invasive species, people are deciding what the protection goals are in the environment. And for the most part, people aren't concerned about preservation of invasive species in the ecology.
Okay.
Actually, one more. This one is related to the, to the gut microbiome. The metabolic capability of the gut microbiome can have significant implications on toxicology and risk assessment, especially if it's able to metabolize, xenobiotics. Can you share your perspective on that? Do you know of any cases where the gut microbiome can metabolize a xenobiotic to a potentially more toxic molecule?
I think it can do. Do you hear me? So it can do, but at ILSI Europe we have no specific activity on this, so I cannot share any specific results. But I know that I think ILSI Hesse is working on something like this.
Yeah, I think this is something that we need to understand. Because the way you get trained in toxicology is that all xenobiotics are going to get metabolized in the liver. But if they're getting metabolized in the gut microbiome before reaching the liver, that's an open question. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I just one addition. What I also know is, or what I've also heard is that sometimes pharmaceuticals, they affect the microbiota as such, although microbiota is not a target, they can have an impact on the microbiota as well, which then changes the microbiota, and this then has a kind of side effect, because the metabolism changes and so on. So this can also happen.
Indeed, and metabolism can get induced, it can get repressed. So that's an interesting open question that remains. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Because I have one, a challenging one. We've been this morning hearing from very interesting projects that are always looking for science-based information in order to get better decisions and to transmit this information to the society, to the government, to the other colleagues that are working in these areas, in order to impact. Okay. Now, I want to see what are your comments, or how do you feel is the challenges that you have in bringing out scientific-based information to the general public or to the other colleagues who are working in trying to make decisions in order to establish new governmental policies, or in order to evaluate the information that you are giving, to have new labeling requirements, for example, or decisions in order to control a new product, whatever. And this is something that we know that since you are producing this information, I wanted to see if you have any comments on what is the best way to transmit this information to the proper channels and receive it as it is, as good scientific data for them to take good decisions. Any comments?
I'll say something because I like to talk. So this has been really interesting as part of our efforts in this area, because we do a lot of work with genetically engineered plants, and when you see what people are doing in this space with genetically engineered mosquitoes, they are very advanced in terms of their public outreach, and they started with the assumption, I think because it's a public health program, because they know they're going to have to put mosquitoes into the environment, and they just assumed that people would be uncomfortable with this. They started with very sophisticated programs of community-based outreach, starting by putting together materials to talk to people in plain language in a way that they could understand in order to familiarize them with this idea. And, you know, as I've gotten to know these projects and looked at the materials, and this is non-gene drive programs, this is the mosquitoes that they've released in Brazil, which are genetically engineered but not gene drive. This is the Eliminate Dengue program, which works in Southeast Asia and Australia, and Target Malaria, which is the big program working in Africa. They have been engaging communities, rural communities, places where the need is, and they don't try to give everyone a PhD in molecular biology in the hopes that then they will understand what's happening. They've hired people who are not scientists, but are experts in communication and experts in community outreach to help them put materials together and in a way that is understandable to the people who are receiving the information. And I think this probably isn't news, but scientists are very focused on precision and accuracy of the truth. And I think, giving a perfectly precise and accurate scientific presentation that the audience doesn't understand is arguably not more truthful than putting together something in the vernacular that actually communicates the point. So, it's a message that we all intellectually understand, but to see the type of effort that it really takes to do that has been a real learning experience. And I think there are lessons from that we can take into other areas of food safety and nutrition.
I would like to go to the other side. We are talking with different people now. We are talking to public people, to the general population, to the public, to the governments, to our colleagues. And especially when we are talking to the public, I think we are having a very interesting role of especially the social media. And in social media, we are having very good information, we are having very bad information, we are having fake news, we are having over information, we have many bloggers, we have many people talking at the same time. And I think we are giving the general population one very difficult idea on who to try, who to trust. Who are the people that really are right in the information that we want? Because there are so many sources, there are so many replications, there are so many people who are talking at the same time. And it's not very easy to communicate to the general population through this media. Probably we have to see how we are over-communicating this population, especially we are facing one of the correlates of the gene control of malaria, because we are having probably a very difficult situation with yellow fever in our country. And so what we have been reading in the last days on yellow fever, they are killing monkeys, they are killing probably they will kill the contacts sometimes. So I think it will be something that we have to be very careful when we are communicating. We have passed the way and we are over communicating some of the days. We have to see how we are controlling the information.
Yes, I know from the research that was done in Brazil with that what you explained before, and I noticed that you were talking about pesticides and consumption, and there is always you can always carry this into misinterpretations or panics around certain risk associated with consumption of certain products. So I just wanted to know that if you have any support with communicators or some specialists in this area in order to transfer the results of your work, especially because you're working with a risk associated with a product that people might not know. You think?
Related to the first question, the intention of this project is to achieve the government, and then I think it's another situation, and all the time we try to show the data in a transparent way, and we try to be very persistent with them because we did several meetings in order to be transparent and show all the scientific based data that we are working to. This is for the second one, that it's a challenge subject because pesticides something that everyone do not want to need to avoid the food with pesticide, and it's something that the risk assessment committee always discuss about it. We have some campaigns to show the good point of pesticide, that it's really important, especially for Brazil, that is a huge country, and the agriculture there is, especially for the last year, it was what made our economy to be survive, yes, and then we cannot let this, and then we need some chemical substance to treat all the crops that we have. But unfortunately, neither of the campaigns were successful in with the public. That if you use all the steps that you need to watch, or you have the government following the limits of residue in food, you can eat it safely. Yeah, and it's something that we are working on that, but nowadays I cannot say that we have a successful project that achieved the public with this concept that you can consume pesticide, and it has some limits that can be safe for our health.
Okay, thank you. And also, maybe Dr. Usaga she explain to us her work with small producers, okay, rural producers. I want to know if it was more effective having students, university students, to work with them, or was it more effective if a scientist would just tell them what to do? You know, because the students sometimes can be of help in this type of communications, and sometimes can be misunderstood. Okay, this is something that needs to be addressed. So how were the society accepting or not the information that you were giving them?
So I can say that professors are extremely happy to work with the students, and one of the reasons is because they are not experts, so they don't try to provide like a specific information, say like, you have to do this, because they are learning as well. So it's a very great experience because both sides are learning at the same time. So it's not the same to have an expert talking to you by the phone or an email. You have the students there. They're willing to learn, but they're also trying to figure out how to solve an issue all together. We're nothing, we know they're producers. We know the basics, we know the science, but we also need them to understand and to solve the real issues. Otherwise, our project wouldn't be like, it wouldn't have an impact as we want.
Yeah, agree. Is there any other question or observation, comment from the audience? Yes, Jenny.
Jenny Jin from ILSI Taiwan. I thank you for all the project experience sharing. I think we do learn a lot from different branches. But I have one takeaway here is the talk, crosstalk. I think Andrew used the word consultation. We are aware of different branches have different strength. From my experience, from Taiwan, is whenever I have this assessment question, I'll go to Research Foundation or HESI. And for dietary intake, I think we did hear some about dietary intake. I think while doing project, North America and Europe, they are really good in this area. So while we are doing this project, can reach out to them. They can save you lots of frustration. And today, I think some presenter talk about microbial safety. Actually, Dr. Michael Doyle, he's a leading global expert. He has so much resource. You can tap into him. I think for us, we should share this type of one ILSI activity to cross-talk more. And that's my takeaway.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments from panels?
I can comment. I definitely agree. I think all the branches are doing great projects, but sometimes to avoid overlap or also to learn from another branch, more communication is needed. But what I heard, because I wasn't here on Friday, but there was a branch staff meeting where they discussed the one ILSI strategy to strengthen the strategy. I think this will be improved in the future. But you were here.
I was. I mean, Jenny, I mean, you know that everybody wants to do this. It's figuring out how to balance those collaborative efforts and those communication efforts with the work that we're all already doing. And I think, there's tons of great examples. That's the thing that always impresses me about the staff meeting here at the annual meeting, is people say, well, folks need to collaborate more. And then we sit together and we hear about the 40 great examples of collaboration between ILSI branches. So, in principle, there's no one who would disagree about it. And I think ILSI organizations are already doing a lot of collaboration. So, it's aspirational. We'll never achieve perfect harmony and perfect knowledge sharing and perfect collaboration. But, I do think since I joined the organization, I joined the Research Foundation in 2009, I think there's been tremendous efforts and that have really improved collaboration across the ILSI organization, and I think that's going to continue.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for your comments. I have to say, as Carmela said in the very beginning, this is the first time in 40 years that we have this session that is not under North America or Europe. So it's one of my great takeaways is that this opened a window for the real work that is being done in the branches and how we can improve it by communicating every single branch in a better way to the other ones. And yes, that's the one ILSI approach. But again, this is the very first time, and we are learning a lot from each other. So good opportunity, and keep going this way.
Great.
So just to take a second, I know I talk too much, but one of the things that we think about a lot at the Research Foundation is how to better accomplish that. And this year we've decided to start an official branch ambassador program where each staffer at the Research Foundation is the ambassador to 2 or more ILSI branches, and then they have a very specific responsibility to communicate with that branch, to handle requests, communications back and forth, and to develop sort of protocols for communicating, between the ILSI branches. It's something we've always done, but this is a way of making it sort of official and order to see if we can help further meet the need that is clearly there.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Yes, just to follow up, I think a simple bulletin, quarterly or annually may actually help, just so that all the ILSI branches know, what each other is doing.
Right. I agree. Yeah, and I would like to have some closing remarks from the panel. If you want to give just one final closing remark, or this would be a good time to do so. And if you want to. Otherwise, I want to finish this session with the last comments that Jorge was just previously saying. And this is the opportunity that we have to work together with the other branches. This is ILSI. It is this one ILSI. And in that line of work, we should be analyzing and studying what the others are doing. Just watching at the posters outside, it was very interesting for me to learn a lot of what the other branches are doing and see how can we find these spaces of communication and collaboration. This is a great opportunity that we have in front, and we have to use it. I want just to finish with this session now, thanking all of you for these excellent presentations and for sharing with us all your efforts and results. Have been very productive, very interesting. I learned a lot this morning, and I'm sure the rest of the audience did also. And I want to also thank Morven McLean, Jenny Shen, and Anya Lopez for setting up this session. You did a great job, and we're really proud to have in this first opportunity to speak as a whole group of branches, and we hope that for next year we'll have an opportunity to see some other branches participating also. So thank you very much for this morning session, and hope you have a very good day and stay back home in your trips. Thanks.